Here I am again after the weekend of a bit of frustration when I couldn't get the header pipes off, as you saw. So I spent a bit of time this morning because I'm going to have another go at it. I just can't sleep. I thought of riding a bike around with some seized bolts. It just gets to me. So I've used the big blue lift to be able to take the bike up. It takes a while to get all the Swiss Army knife of the big blue lift right, because it's different for every bike. It's very stable, and it's a great lift because it doesn't take up the whole of the garage. So I'm going to try and drill the studs out. I've done it before. It's not easy, so let's see what happens. It's like a bad dream, this. I keep coming back to it. And to drill the studs out, these are perfectly good studs, and I have to destroy them to try and be able to get it out. But I think it's worth a try. I've measured the depth, and it's almost exactly 20 millimeters from this flange through to the wall where it actually touches the cylinder head. So as long as I don't go more than 20 millimeters at this stage, I could drill the studs from the manifold. And if I'm right about this being the problem, that the studs are the cause, then at that stage the manifold should come off. If it doesn't, I've really messed up big style. But quite amazingly, this morning, a subscriber who doesn't want to be known contacted me directly and said, I've left him on a cliffhanger, a real cliffhanger. I've got to find a way of sorting this out. And he's offered to pay for the ceramic coating if I can get these exhausts off. Isn't that kind of him? The ceramic coating isn't cheap. It's £160 to do the header pipes and the Y piece complete. I don't know how they do it. I presume they shot blast it and then they give it coatings and bake it on. It's the only real way you can have a go yourself, but it's £160 plus VAT. So it's really £200, and he says as an incentive, if I can do this, he'll pay for that. What an incentive, eh? I'm going to concentrate on this stud here because you can hardly see the bottom one. Whatever I do to the top one, of course I do to all of them. Now, when you drill a stud out, you've got to get the drill hole in the center, and that is the hardest thing to do. If you go off center, you're going to drill into your cylinder and cause all sorts of problems. Now, when you've got some thread, like I have here, because sometimes they break off flush, so everyone is slightly different, or they may break off inside, but if they break off with some thread, what I've just turned down is this little brass guide tool so that I get the drill in central. So I've got an 8mm thread in there, which will go onto the stud, and a 4mm drill hole at that end. So I'm going to start with a 4mm drill, and it'll go in exactly in the center. So do you understand the principle? So I screw that on first, so I don't have to center punch a hole. I screw that in, and that is now absolutely lined to the center of the hole, and I can start with a 4mm. So you can see how it lines up right in the center, and it keeps my drill straight. Because the drill chuck was catching this header pipe here, I've made an extension rod and tap, and then just turn this down and put a locking nut in it so that I can drill past. It's something you can't buy in B&Q, but At least if you've got a bit of spare metal, you know, and a lathe and a milling machine so that you can create the Allen key. And you won't see the drill, so you can see that nothing hits the manifold now. So once I get down to, well, what I've been doing is enlarging the drill little bit by little bit, and then I switched to milling pieces, and this I found has helped me so much in the past. If you get high-speed steel, cobalt, end mills for a milling machine, which you can put in your drill, it's difficult because I've had to extend it because the pipe is in its way. If this will come off, then I can drill the rest of it out. I need to go at least as deep as this flange, so I need to go to the end of there. Now these are much tougher for drilling things like this because they've got 4 teeth. Almost there. Now before, when I've had to get studs out, nobody's ever mentioned using milling end mills, high-speed steel. It works so much better than a drill. Now this next size mill is actually 8mm, so I can drill through the flange, but I mustn't go any further. That's the 8mm through, I think, virtually the flange. I don't go much further. If I'm correct in my assumption, I can now start on the bottom one, which is exactly the same, so it's very hard for me to film while I'm doing it. The camera's in my way, everything's in my way, so I'm going to carry on with this one. And if I'm correct, and I drill the 8mm through the flange, it should just come off in my dreams. So I've just finished the bottom hole, and if I'm right, one pull, it's just ready to go. Wow. So you can see the holes are not threaded, of course, in the flange. Flanges, I don't think I realised that, flange is welded onto the bar. Let me just see what else is there. We've got the gasket. Gonna get new ones of them. I mean, my problems aren't over, but then, wow, I feel so much better than yesterday. I've got a flush stud there and a slightly proud stud there. So I don't know whether I can use my tool on the bottom one. I know it's hard actually to see what's happening here, but I've managed to get a couple of drills into the bottom hole. I made a centre mark, and I've started at a 2mm drill, and then 3, 4, 5, and now up to a small mill. So this is 6mm, I need to get to about 7, and then I should have enough metal left. Going well. So I drilled after the 6mm milling cutter. I've just opened that up with a 7mm drill, because remember, there's still thread in there. There's all sorts of metal in there, but there's still thread in there. If you went bigger than that, then you'd be in trouble because you couldn't get a stud in. So this is an 8mm die now, tap, and I'm recutting. It's hard to show you while I do it, but I'm recutting and go forward then back to clear any swarf. Recutting the thread for a new stud. And then I've got to start it all again at the top right hand one to finish this side. I've got some studs in stock from last GS. I've got 3. I don't know whether they're the same length because they're only 30mm and the flange is 20, and then it's got to have the bolt on top of that. So I think they must be longer for this particular bike. So I'm going to order 4 stainless steel ones this time, and with some copper grease in them that will withstand the temperature. They should never do this again. But let me just try the one I've got. Okay, I'm going to suck everything up from this is a stud, a BMW stud. I've just put 2 8mm bolts on it, so I've got something to turn it with. But this is a stud off that'll fit a 2005 GS. So a very positive straight fit in. So now I'll start on the top one. I'll not film it. You'll be fed up with studs. Much more difficult because it's absolutely flush, this one here. Absolutely flush with the face. It is done. This is a right-hand cylinder. I've got a couple of studs from the 2005. I just screwed them in just to and tried the exhaust again, and it fits well. I'll order the proper studs tonight. The left-hand cylinder is actually a lot easier for some reason. These worked really well. The holes tapped perfectly. So now I'm going to order new studs, stainless steel ones this time, probably new bolt heads and new gaskets, and then I'm going to pack up the exhaust to go down to be ceramic coated by Zircotech, I think it's called, Performance 1 coatings. Can't wait till they come back. So this has been the cause of my sleepless nights, and it's good to see them on the bench now. The flanges are a little bit different than I thought. I didn't realise they were part of the exhaust welded onto it, or however they're fixed. There's no thread, of course, it's just holes, plain holes, as you can see. So it baffles me how they got so rusted onto the studs themselves. But you could see that the second that I drilled the final stud out, they fell off. So it was the studs, as I thought it must be. It couldn't be anything else.